What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about three-point editing and when it's useful. Now let's get started. Now, if you enjoy these videos and you want to see more like it, please subscribe to the channel because I'm constantly creating new content. Let's head down here in the timeline. You notice I have two clips separated. The first clip is exactly 10 seconds. There's a 10-second gap in between, and then the second clip is 10 seconds. Just trying to make it uniform so it's easy to follow. I've also color-coded the clips to separate them. So I'm going to put the playhead back here at the 10-second mark. So the goal here is to fill in this gap and use three-point editing to do so. Now, when you only have a couple clips on the timeline, it's easy just to, you can drag and drop and cut and move them around. But when three-point editing comes really in handy is when you have a lot of stuff on your timeline and you're way down your edit. Say you have an hour-and-a-half movie that you're working on, and there's numerous clips and effects and all these different things added in, but you need to replace just a few clips inside the middle somewhere. So that's what we're going to imagine this little space to be. So there's a few ways to do it. I'm going to head up here to the clip that's in my source panel, and it is 19 seconds and 5 frames long. There's only 10-second gap here that I'm trying to work with. I'm going to slide the playhead down here, and I'm actually going to make it a 5-second clip just to make it easy to work with to get the fundamentals down, and then we'll show you different options later. So let's just make this 5 seconds. Now the playhead is at 5 seconds. I'm going to put an out point there. So you can do this, of course, two ways. You can come down here and click the mark out, or keyboard shortcut O. Remember, in and out is I for in and O for out. So now we have an out point marked. So now whenever we pull or insert this clip here, it'll only grab from this specific section, the start to the 5-second point. So let's go down the timeline. Let's move the playhead over just a little bit. So whenever you insert things from the source panel, it'll go wherever the playhead is left. So let's go here to the overwrite or keyboard shortcut period. I'm going to click it, and you're going to know it started right where the playhead was right here. It inserted that 5-second clip, and there's a few seconds on each side for the gaps. Now, I'm going to delete that. Now, here in the timeline, I'm going to put an endpoint for the timeline. I'm going to move the playhead away. Now, with the exact same section highlighted here, I'm going to do the exact same thing, but you'll notice it's no longer going to send it to where the playhead was left. It's now going to send it to its endpoint that we've established. So let's click overwrite, and it did the same thing. Even though the playhead was over here, it moved it down here. Now, another way to take advantage of this, I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to remove this endpoint. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to put an out point. So I'm going to click O for out, and you notice it went back to the beginning and then it had the out point here. So with this exact same clip still highlighted with the in and out points there, if I do the overwrite, and because I have the out point established on the timeline, I can actually move the playhead even in this middle of this clip, and you'll see the out point is still there. Now when I place override, it's going to fill it in, but you'll notice what it did. It started at the end and backfilled it. So it started from here in the source panel and backfilled it with all this information. So that's why they called it three-point edit. So you have the end point of the clip, you have the out point of the clip, and then you're just working with a end point or an out point in the timeline. That's the 3 points. Now I'm going to delete this. So let's just say your clip is longer. Remember, this clip originally the full clip is 19 seconds. So I'm going to move this back to the very beginning, and I'm going to make that the end point. So now, the playhead over here. So now let's go a little further. Let's go say 14 seconds. And let's make the out point there. So now, if we put the marker here, remember this gap is only 10 seconds long, but now we've identified that we want 14 seconds included. Now if I click the override button, what's going to happen is it started where the playhead was, it hit the 10-minute mark, and then it added that other 14 seconds and covered up the following clip. So if you have an established edit, and say this orange clip is a necessity, and this yellow clip's a necessity, and we can't mess with either one of them, that's obviously not going to work. So I'm going to click that. Now what you can do is say you want to fit inside this space alone. Click and highlight it. / it's going to create an endpoint at the start and an out point. So it's saying you don't want it to spill over and you don't want it to go before. You want to contain it with inside these walls. And like I said before, this is a 10-second section. So when you go to click override, even though I've identified that I want the 14-second use, when I click override, it's going to bring up this tab, this fit clip tab. So there's a few different options. If you click change clip speed, fill to fit, that's going to shrink down this 14-second and smash it to fit in that 10-second. So watch, we'll do that. And it fit exactly. It didn't override the orange clip and it didn't override the yellow clip. But you notice right here where the length, it says 142%. That means when it smashed it down, it sped it up in order to fit in that 10-second gap. So now it's running at 142% speed. So if it's just a B-roll shot and you don't care, and you have to have every frame that's in this 14 seconds appear, you have to be able to see it, and it's okay if it's at a faster time, it just speeds it up. But the problem is, if there's any dialogue or anything like that, it's gonna make it sound funny. So that's okay if it's a B-roll, but say you don't want that. I'm gonna undo that. We'll go back to that same feature. We'll click this. So we showed you what change clip speed is. And on the flip side, if the gap is say 20 seconds and the clip is only 14 seconds, it'll stretch it to the 20-second mark and then slow it down. It'll speed up by shortening, or it'll stretch it out to fill in the gap. Hence it says fit to fill. So say we don't want to do that. Say we have dialogue that's important. You can ignore the source endpoint, which is saying it's going to ignore the source endpoint here and just put the endpoint of the source at the endpoint to make sure you have that exact same frame. Then it's going to shave off 4 seconds here to fit in that 10. Or if you go ignore source out point, you're essentially saying this endpoint here is more important and that's a must-see frame, and shave off this side in order to fit. So if you say ignore sequence endpoint, it's saying ignore this endpoint and only focus on the out point. So it'll take the out point and backfill to the 10 seconds, and then the extra 4 seconds, it's going to bleed over and cover up this, because you're saying ignore the endpoint, which is this. So it's saying ignore that and cover up in the sequence. And then the ignore out point is the same thing. You're saying the endpoint up here from the source is the most important, so no matter what, add that in, let it play out, and then ignore this sequence out point and cover up the rest. So I'll show you that. I'm going to leave that, ignore sequence out point. So you're saying the sequence out point here is not important, ignore it. Start from the beginning, which is up here from the source, and play the whole 14 seconds. So watch. So you can see how it completely ignored the endpoint and just covered up some of the orange clip. I'm going to undo that. Let's go back here and see the dialogue one more time. I'm going to backtrack up here to the ignore source endpoint and ignore source out point. Let's just say you do want to ignore the source endpoint, and you're essentially telling it that this end of this clip is the most important. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to click OK, and you notice it started here at the end, and it backfilled here, and it cut off the beginning of this section of the clip, because that's what you chose. But say you decide you actually want to shift it around a little bit, you can always use the slip tool, which is right here. Come over here, and you can move the clip inside. So you're essentially, you have the whole 14 seconds still in there, even though the brackets only show 10 seconds. So you can shift around and play with those other 4 seconds in there to manipulate it and move frame by frame to adjust it exactly the way you want. Now the other big thing to be careful with, so I'm going to undo this. So I'm going to click this again, and I'm going to do / and put the in and out points in that gap. Now when you go to fill this, there's a box down here that says always use this choice. If you decide you want to smash it or stretch it to fit in those brackets, the in and out points in the sequence down here, if you click always use this choice, that means it's never going to give these options again. It's going to assume you always want to smash or stretch. So be careful. I would highly suggest never clicking this, because whatever choice you've chosen here, it won't bring this box up again. It won't bring this option up again, and it'll always just assume that's what you want going forward. So I would highly suggest do not click this box and leave it as is. And then every time you have a new thing you want to add, you can choose from those options and it'll still be available. Anyway, that is a 3-point edit inside of Adobe Premiere Pro. Like I said, it's very beneficial when you have a lot of things on the timeline and you have it's a very long sequence, and to be able to shift and move around different B-roll clips or different takes, or you decide you want a different shot. It's just really helpful without jeopardizing or moving the rest of the timeline. Anyway, hope this helped, and if it did, please hit the thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm. And if you enjoy watching these videos and you want to see more like it, please subscribe to the channel. That being said, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Later!